Hey guys, my name is Lana. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be doing the time and place stag. Okay, let's start. So I had trouble thinking of books. I have a terrible memory when it comes to everything, but especially my life before 2004. I don't know why. Well, in 2004, I moved with my family back to Rome, so it was a big change, and so I think maybe that is why my brain really holds on to those memories of that year, and everything after that is a little more fresh. Before that, it's all one big mess of a memory, so I really struggle thinking of specific books that I read. But I want to start with the one that I do remember, and it's Little Women. I have a very specific memory of finishing this book. I remember it was in Kiev, Ukraine. I was maybe 8. I don't know. And I remember the specific place in a specific room where I stood when I finished the book and I was putting it down. And I remember this very strong feeling of being so upset that the book is done. I just really wanted to keep going in that universe. I wanted to read more about everyday stuff. I just wanted to be in that house with those characters. So that's one of the first ones that I remember really loving. So that is definitely one that I wanted to include in this list. As I was saying this, I also remembered loving Secret Garden and Pollyanna. It's too late now. Next up is really special, also because I actually do have the same physical book that I read that first time, which is very rare and unusual because, as I said, I've moved so much in my life and I had to leave a lot of books, a lot of things that I used to own behind, and I don't really have anything in terms of books that I had when I was younger, but somehow I still have this, and I think it's because when I moved to Moscow to go to university, I took it with me. I read this book when I was like 10. This is a paperback in Russian that is very loved. I'm very much not the kind of person who likes to keep her books pristine. I'm not necessarily, being mean to them just because I like them to be battered, but like seeing how touched this book is makes me really happy. And I took it with me when we went to Thailand. And I don't know if I started this and finished on that flight, but I definitely finished the book on that super long flight from Ukraine to Thailand. And I just remember the airplane being super dark because people were sleeping, and I had my little light on and my sister was sleeping beside me, and I was just devouring this book. The cool thing about The Mystery of Edwin Drood, well, it's not a cool thing, but this is the last novel that Charles Dickens wrote, and he actually didn't finish it. He died before he could finish it. You get to, an end of a chapter, nothing is revealed yet, like there's nothing, like it's in the middle of the book. And then you get to all the annex stuff. I'm pretty sure I didn't know that it was not finished, so I was just bamboozled. Like, what? Wait, what? And in this annex right here, there's this whole section by J. Cumming Walters, which is basically like the analysis of the text and comparing this novel to all other Dickens novels, and like they're trying to crack the code of what happens next. And it's so fascinating and so cool because they basically make parallels of different characters in different novels and saying, well, there's this woman right here and it's like those other characters in other novels and they have a very similar role in those novels, so maybe if she is playing that same role, she will do this, which will mean that this happens in the, and it's just like reading that analysis, I just remember loving it so much. And yeah, this book just means a lot to me. I really need to reread it. I love this. Next up is a book I read when I was 11. At this time I was living in Rome and I was going to a French lyceum because my mom really wanted me to learn French. And so I was in a school where every single subject was in French. People around me were French. And I didn't speak French. Before the start of the year, my mom gave me like a crash course in French. And I was so terrified. It was really hard at first. I have a lot of anecdotes of, you know, the way that I was coping in this school. We had like, I remember having a test in biology and we had to give examples of some process. And I couldn't remember any of the names of trees or animals, and I ended up doing like little drawings with arrows pointing like what's happening. And I remember one of those drawings was of an ant, and drawing an ant is very hard, especially when you're 11. But I actually ended that year very well, and I loved that school. Within that year, we read the Odyssey. This was what started my love of Greek myths. I cannot believe I still have the same copy that I had when I was 11. And as you can see, this is in French. And I have a very distinct memory that we had to learn a little piece of it by heart and perform it. And apart from different markings that I have in the book, which I don't know what they mean, I still have this little bookmark of like a thank you note, the little section that I had to learn. Anyway, I love the Odyssey so much. I have a lot of books that have a lot of memories with them, but I don't want to stop on every single one of them. But I quickly want to mention, first of all, Ken Follett, Pillars of the Earth. We used to always, every single summer go to the same little town in Italy from when I was like 14 months. And there's this bookstore that has a little section of English books, and every summer I would go in and pick up something that just appealed to me. I don't know what possessed me one summer when I was maybe, again, 13, 14, 15, I don't know, to pick up this brick of a book about the building of a cathedral in medieval England. I don't know what I was thinking, because it just doesn't seem like something that would really appeal to a 15-year-old girl. But I mean, I love that book so much. That was just a big turning point when I realized, oh, historical fiction is for me. I also want to mention Juliet, which was another book that I also picked up one summer on a whim in the same bookstore, and it just happened that the book takes place in Siena, and that summer we were passing through Siena one day while I was reading the book. And I remember getting there and telling my parents, okay, here's what I need to check out. I need to see this place, and this, because I read about them in this book and I wanted to see where it took place. And that was very special. Hi, Editing Lana here. I realized I never said anything about what Juliet is about. It's about a woman in America whose aunt dies and leaves her a key, and a mysterious note that brings her to Siena, where she sort of is to uncover the secret of her family. And it's intertwined with Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. So in this book, there's also a play on the fact that Romeo and Juliet was a very famous story that actually happened, and by the time it orally got to England and to Shakespeare, that made his changes and made it into a play, a lot of things were different. And in this book you learn the story of the original Giulietta and Romeo that were actually not in Verona but Siena. And so in alternate chapters, you learn about their story. And there's a lot of Shakespeare lines in the dialogue that's written, which is super cool. And before reading this book, I wasn't really interested in Shakespeare that much. I think I read, if not all, but at least a part of Romeo and Juliet in school, but I wasn't really into it that much. And after this book, I was obsessed. I loved it so much. And I think this was like a first glimpse into my eventual love for Shakespeare. Because, you know, years later, when I was 24 and I was starting my third semester in drama school and we were starting work on Shakespeare, I was terrified because I was worried that because the language is different in the book, that I will have trouble as a non-English speaker. And I just worry that it was, you know, something grand and too big for me. And of course, I've quickly learned that Shakespeare is super accessible. And once you sort of learn how to read him, he's incredible and I'm super obsessed. It's fun to remember, you know, that first brush with him in this book. It's ludicrous to think that back then I was so close to finding that love for Shakespeare if I had just, you know, been a little more curious and went out and read other plays by him or something. But yeah, so this is like, apart from reading the book and being in Siena at the same time, it's also a cool sneak peek into my future obsession. Then we're gonna do a time jump to when I graduated university when I was 21 and I was looking for a job. And it wasn't a fun time. Again, I don't know what happened. I don't remember picking up this book. I don't remember the inner dialogue of, you know, oh, this looks like fun, I should read this. I have no memory of this. And this is the first book I read in this genre, which means that there was no way for me to know that I would enjoy it. But this book changed my life, and I'm not exaggerating. This is The Body Book by Cameron Diaz. You know how in one of my videos I mentioned how much I love books about, like nonfiction books about the human body, about the anatomy and what happens and psychology, and just I adore it. And this is the first book that I read of that genre. And I love it so much. So in this book, Cameron Diaz went to a bunch of doctors, experts, professors, and asked a lot of questions about the human body to understand how it works, because she herself was very curious, and she wrote this book with everything that she learned from them. It's so well written in that it's so readable. I learned so much from this book. I had no idea about half of these things. Even, no, not half, more. The thing about the Body Book, it's not just the cool information, which is actually really, really cool. It's the way she talks about the body and health. Oh my god, I'm getting emotional. This is not the first time I got emotional talking about this book. But like the way she talks about movement and nutrition and aging as well, that we should be looking at getting older as a gift, because so many people don't get to grow old. If you are, that is the greatest thing ever, and you should be treasuring it and taking care of your body. And just, oh my god, the way she makes you feel about your own cells, it's indescribable. Like, I wanted to sit down, like, I can't tell you how many times this is very embarrassing, like I sat down and just like hugged my body, and I was just feeling so grateful for everything that it does for me and all the things that I had no idea I was doing. And like, it really makes you think differently about what you're eating and what you're doing. And like, I still do so many things that I picked up from this book today. Like, I still drink a liter of water every single morning before I eat anything. Like stuff like that. And this book makes you want to be so healthy. Because, you know, she's not a doctor, she's an actress, and she just is telling you all these things that she learned, and she's so enthusiastic about it. And she has lots of stories in here about, you know, I always thought this, but actually it's a completely different thing and I had no idea. And it just feels like you're discovering the world with her, and I cannot tell you how much I love this book. This whole book is filled with notes that I wrote because I was just, my mind was getting blown away. I have so many, like, look at this. I even did like doodles because some parts of like the digestive system, I knew the terminology in Russian and I had to not get lost in the translation. And so it was just, oh my God, I like this one. It just says pee a lot. When I read this book, it only recently came out, so there wasn't a Russian translation of the book, and I was telling so many people about it, and I was getting so many questions, people coming to me for like advice on you know, what should I be eating and blah blah blah. And I was getting so overwhelmed that what I ended up doing is I sat down and every single thing that I underlined, I translated into Russian and made like a PDF of like things I learned from this book. And I passed it around my friends and acquaintances, and it was very well received. I would also like to say that this was a good sort of introduction into the genre because it goes pretty much over your whole body and like generally everything that you should know. And because of that book, I was able to pick out other books that were a little more dense, that were a little more scientific, and I did not get lost in them. A good example is this monster of a book. This is very much a scientific text, and it's very, very, very dense. In fact, I could not get through the physical copy. I needed the audiobook because I just kept falling asleep. It's very much written like a very dense textbook, but the information here is incredible. But again, like, this book does not stop and tell you all the things that you should know when going into the topics that are explored in this book. And having had that introduction and that knowledge from the body book really helped me get through this one and really appreciate it. When I say that the body book changed my life, it completely changed my lifestyle, how I sleep, what I eat, how much I move, and how I move. It made things that before I just knew as, you know, this is something that's healthy. I now had a much, much more specific understanding of why it's healthy, and when I would do something, it would be with so much purpose that it changed everything. Anyway, I cannot recommend that book enough. I moved to the US when I was 23. Different books correspond to different memories and different points of, you know, my life there. And it was really hard to pick one, but I picked this one just because it's very sentimental. It's The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, and I read this while I was in school. It's a very short novel. It's under 200 pages, and it's fantasy. I don't recall the exact plot. I do remember that it's about a 7-year-old boy who, you know, is experiencing some troubles at home, and there's like a neighboring house at the end of the lane, and there's magic involved, and it's a little creepy, but it's so beautiful. What I remember of this book is just how beautifully it's written. Part of my training, we had a class that's called VPS, Voice Production and Speech, and we just started learning American Standard, which is like an accent made for theater. It doesn't actually exist in the world, but that's sort of like a heightened version of the American accent that's mostly used for classical plays, for Shakespeare and the Greeks and all of those. And me and my friend, I just remember her hanging out in my dorm, and I remember she was laying on my bed and I was sitting on the floor next to the bed, and I was reading out loud from this book and trying to read it in American Standard. And I remember it was very snowy and cold outside. It was winter. So yeah, so because I read it out loud and it was connected to my training, it has like a very sentimental value outside of the book itself. Anyway, I feel like I've been talking for hours and hours. These are all the books that I wanted to mention. This is it for this video. I hope this was interesting. I'll see you in my next video.